Close your eyes for a second and picture a wedding setup, white linens, candles, smiling faces. Now snap that image in half and replace it with a flash of a young man's face, a line of stitches running across his nose, and a room that looks like it just survived a storm. That jolt is exactly how the show introduced the moment that left fans arguing online for weeks. The footage gives you the wound and the wreckage, but it refuses to hand you the how or the why. I'm Sarah, this is Sister Wives Daily. If you like honest on-screen recaps and clear-headed commentary, hit subscribe and leave a comment below with your take. I want to know what you think happened before we go any further. I'm going to be straight with you. I only talk about what actually showed up on the episodes and what cast members chose to put on social media. I won't invent private conversations or pass along rumor dressed as fact. What we do have are a handful of images and statements that the show and the cast made public. Micah appearing with a stitched nose in the trailer, scenes of reception tables overturned, fiery confessional clips, and social posts that people have screenshot and reported. Those are the building blocks we'll use. It's tempting to rush straight to accusations, to pick a side and stay there. I get it, because reality TV makes you feel like you were in the room, but the show itself created a gap. The editors chose to show the aftermath and not the moment of impact, and that choice transformed a private family conflict into something the audience is now trying to solve. That vacuum is what turned every social post, every confessional line, and every off-camera rumor into part of the story. If you watched the trailer, you saw the stitches, you saw Ethan's hard confessional line aimed at Veronica, you saw tables upturned like a physical map of how fractured things had become. You also saw nothing that showed exactly how Micah was hurt. That missing piece is the single thing that keeps this story alive online, and it's the reason people are posting screenshots, claiming versions of events, and calling each other out in the comments. Over the next segments, I'll lay out the timeline the episodes gave us. I'll quote the moments we actually saw on camera and in public posts, and I'll point out where the editors chose to stop the story and let the audience fill the blanks. I'll explain why each person involved might frame the event the way they did on camera, and I'll highlight the parts that are firmly on record versus the parts that remain claims. I'll also be clear about what I'm speculating on, and I'll always flag it as speculation because facts and allegations are not the same thing. This is about more than gossip. It's about how a family handles crisis on television, how editing shapes what millions of people believe, and how the people involved decide what to say when everyone is watching. So comment now with your theory, accident, altercation, or something else, and tell me which piece of the footage you found most convincing. Stay tuned because we're going step by step through the episodes, using only what was shown and what was posted publicly to figure out how a wedding day turned into one of the show's biggest controversies. To understand the chaos that unfolded on that wedding day, you have to rewind the tape. The Plath family wasn't walking into this celebration as one big happy unit. They were dragging years of fractures, grudges, and unresolved battles into a single event that was supposed to be about unity. The wounds between them weren't just emotional, they were fresh, raw, and wide open. First, let's talk about the foundation, Kim and Barry's divorce. For years, the Plath parents presented themselves as the unwavering pillars of discipline and tradition, but when their marriage cracked, it sent shockwaves through the kids. Divorce is messy in any family, but in a family that has lived under the microscope of reality TV, it becomes a defining earthquake. Barry was shown trying to pick up the pieces of his new single life while clinging to what control he had left. Kim, on the other hand, was leaning into reinvention, pursuing her own interests, shifting her image, and stepping out of the rigid role she once embraced. That split forced the kids to take sides, whether they admitted it or not, and it created small alliances and cold wars that shaped everything leading up to the wedding. The siblings themselves were far from united. Ethan was still carrying years of frustration over his upbringing, and his marriage to Olivia had placed him in permanent opposition to his parents, especially Kim. Olivia wasn't just his partner, she was the lightning rod for nearly every conflict. To some siblings, she was the one who gave Ethan strength to question the family system. To others, she was the reason he seemed distant and rebellious. By the time this wedding rolled around, Olivia was already painted as either the villain or the liberator, depending on whose confessional you believed. Micah, on the other hand, was in a very different place. He had been building independence, modeling, exploring new friendships, and carving out a life that wasn't defined by the family rules. Outwardly, he seemed to be thriving, but viewers know Micah has always been the sibling who doesn't want to be dragged into every emotional skirmish. He tries to keep the peace, but he also won't stand still if he feels someone's crossing him. Heading into the wedding, Micah was positioned as a stabilizer, the sibling who might bridge gaps, until suddenly he became the one physically hurt in the middle of it all. Then there's Mariah. If Micah was the stabilizer, Mariah was the spark. Her relationship with her parents had been turbulent, her bond with Olivia had been complicated, and her personal struggles with heartbreak and identity were always close to the surface. Mariah came into this event carrying her own raw nerves. She was fiercely loyal to her independence, and at the same time she was deeply sensitive to any perceived betrayal. Her presence at the wedding added a volatile ingredient, a young woman determined not to be controlled but still vulnerable to being hurt by the family's fractures. And we can't overlook Olivia herself. By the time this wedding happened, Olivia had already lived through years of being painted as the outsider. She'd sparred with Kim, weathered tension with Barry, and even felt the strain seep into her bond with Ethan's siblings. In the show's editing, she's portrayed as simultaneously strong and brittle, someone who won't back down but who can't walk into a family gathering without being treated as the center of conflict. Walking into the wedding, Olivia wasn't neutral. She was already carrying the weight of suspicion and judgment, both from within the family and from the way producers had framed her storyline. That's the emotional backdrop. A broken parental marriage, siblings who couldn't agree on loyalty, and partners pulled into the storm. Every smile on wedding day was layered over years of unspoken tension. The producers knew it too. Reality TV isn't filmed in a vacuum. It's edited to build anticipation, to make you feel the stakes before the dominoes fall. Weddings in these shows are never just weddings. They're narrative milestones, big shiny events where hidden conflicts erupt in ways that guarantee a cliffhanger trailer. TLC framed this wedding not just as a union, but as a collision. So by the time the first overturned table appeared on screen, and by the time Micah's stitched nose flashed in the promo, the audience wasn't just seeing an accident, they were seeing the inevitable boiling over of fractures that had been simmering for years. Producers didn't need to explain it right away, they just needed to remind viewers of everything leading up to it, and then pull the curtain down right before the truth was revealed. That's where we were standing as the wedding began, a family that looked like they were celebrating, but in reality, one spark away from combusting. When the episode cuts to the wedding, the tone shifts almost immediately. Weddings are usually filmed like fairy tales, slow motion shots of flowers, lingering close-ups on nervous smiles, sentimental music underscoring every moment. That's how the producers set us up too in those opening shots. But buried in the middle of those dreamy visuals, the first shock lands, Micah sitting under harsh light, a stitched nose in plain view, not covered, not explained, not brushed aside, just there, the camera giving us the wound before offering us any context. It was a deliberate editorial choice. Instead of easing viewers into a celebratory family event, the show dropped a mystery on our laps. Why is Micah injured at his sister's wedding? The trailer, which dropped before the episode even aired, leaned on that image heavily. TLC knows how to bait curiosity, and Micah's stitched face became the focal point. No matter what else was happening at the wedding, that single shot became the hook, because you don't show stitches without a story behind them, and yet that story was exactly what the episode refused to reveal. The chaos didn't stop with Micah's injury. The cameras then panned across the reception hall, and what should have been a pristine setup looked like a war zone. Tables flipped over, decorations scattered, centerpieces broken on the floor. Instead of laughter and dancing, viewers were treated to destruction. That shot of the overturned tables was more than just scenery. It was foreshadowing, proof that something serious had gone down off camera, and yet again no explanation. No camera angle showing the actual moment the tables fell, just the aftermath, carefully staged for us to interpret. That's where Veronica's role enters. On screen, the producers included mention of her Instagram post, a choice that connected the chaos inside the episode to the noise happening outside in real time. Fans had already seen Veronica's claims circulating online, so including that reference blurred the line between show narrative and social media gossip. Her version of events painted a harsher picture, one that suggested something darker than an accident. The fact that the editors chose to highlight her post but not show us footage of what happened is telling. TLC wanted the speculation, not the resolution. The emotional fallout was immediate, and in true reality TV fashion, deeply uneven. Ethan delivered one of the most pointed confessionals of the season, speaking directly about Veronica and defending his perspective of the night. His tone wasn't celebratory, it was confrontational, as if the wedding had been eclipsed by this single defining conflict. His anger gave weight to the mystery. If this were just a clumsy accident, why would Ethan be so sharp, so defensive, so clearly enraged? Micah, for his part, remained visibly shaken but quiet. The stitches told the story of pain, but his words didn't. His silence became almost louder than Ethan's outrage, because viewers couldn't stop asking, what is he holding back? Was he choosing to stay out of the blame game? Or was he protecting someone by not telling the full story? His posture, his clipped statements, and his refusal to dive into details only deepened the unease. Other siblings reacted differently. Mariah, emotional as always, seemed caught between anger and heartbreak. Her face betrayed how torn she was, loyal to her siblings, but desperate not to relive the cycle of explosive family drama in front of cameras yet again. Olivia's presence added its own layer too. Even when she wasn't speaking, the editing cut to her reactions, reminding viewers that she's always seen as a flashpoint in the family narrative. Every raised eyebrow, every silence, every glance toward Ethan felt like it carried added meaning. But for all those reactions, for all the overturned tables and bloody stitches, there's one thing TLC never showed: the incident itself. Not a single frame of the moment Micah got hurt, not the second when the tables went crashing down, not the confrontation, if there was one, that set the chaos in motion. Instead, the episode gave us fragments, wounds, wreckage, confessionals, and an Instagram post. The gap in the middle was left intentionally blank, a narrative black hole for viewers to fill with their own theories. And that's the genius and the cruelty of the edit. By refusing to give us the what happened, producers forced fans to become detectives. Was it a drunken stumble, a fight that escalated, a prank gone wrong? Was it Micah defending someone? Was it an accident during setup? Each possibility lives in that missing footage, and TLC knew that leaving it out would keep people talking far longer than showing the truth ever could. What we were left with was not a wedding episode in the traditional sense. It was a crime scene without the crime, a family celebration turned into a televised whodunit. Micah's stitched nose became the symbol, Veronica's Instagram post became the fuel, Ethan's rage became the soundtrack, and the overturned tables became the haunting visual. But the truth, the uncut, unfiltered truth, was edited away, and that's what makes this wedding episode unforgettable. It wasn't the vows or the first dance that defined it, it was the silence, the missing footage, and the way TLC handed viewers a puzzle with half the pieces gone. What makes this entire storyline so gripping isn't just the shocking imagery of Micah's stitched face or the overturned tables, it's the way two entirely different narratives emerged from the very same night. And instead of clarifying anything, TLC leaned into the division, setting up a family drama that played out on screen and across social media at the same time. Let's start with Veronica, because her voice entered this story, loudest and in the boldest way. She wasn't subtle, she wasn't careful, she went public. Her Instagram post didn't mince words, and TLC even included mention of it on the show, which means the producers knew it had become part of the storyline. Veronica painted the night as something far darker than clumsy chaos. She described it as violent, as intentional, pointing fingers in a way that viewers couldn't ignore. To her, Micah wasn't just unlucky, he was a victim of someone else's actions. That framing was powerful, because once you label an injury as the result of an attack, you completely shift how the audience interprets every single piece of footage. Micah's silence looks like protection, Ethan's rage looks like defense, and the overturned tables look like evidence. Veronica's version, laid out so clearly on social media, became the match that lit a fire under the fandom. But of course, Veronica wasn't the only one with a story to tell. Ethan's confessionals inside the episode gave us the other side, and his delivery was heated. You could see how personal this was for him, how much anger he carried toward Veronica for even suggesting that someone in the family had deliberately hurt Micah. Ethan positioned Veronica as the real problem, the one stirring up chaos, the one throwing around accusations that would only rip the family further apart. His tone wasn't soft or diplomatic, it was sharp, protective, the kind of response you give when you feel like someone is threatening your own. To Ethan, the truth wasn't that a brother had lashed out. The truth was that Veronica had taken a painful, complicated night and turned it into a scandal. Tegan's presence added another layer. On camera, she was drawn into the narrative, whether she wanted to be or not. Veronica's framing implicated her, and suddenly she was stuck in the uncomfortable position of defending herself against whispers that she had no control over. The edit leaned into her calmness. She didn't explode. She didn't make a dramatic speech. Instead, her dismissiveness, her laughter at the absurdity of it all, became its own defense. TLC clearly wanted the audience to weigh her nonchalance against Veronica's fire. Was Tegan unbothered because she was innocent, or was her lightheartedness a way to avoid digging deeper? The producers didn't answer that. They just let the contrast hang in the air. Meanwhile, the rest of the Plath family responded in quieter, but no less telling ways. Kim and Barry, now divorced but still the anchors of the family's origin story, were in the background of this chaos. Neither of them came forward with sweeping declarations on the show about the wedding disaster, but their presence was still important. The split between them had already fractured the siblings, and their silence during this moment only amplified the sense that the kids were now left to handle the fallout themselves. Their lack of direct commentary left space for the younger generation's voices to dominate, which is exactly what happened. Mariah, always raw and emotional, carried the tension in her body language. Even when she wasn't directly involved in the accusations, her visible discomfort told the audience everything about how exhausting it must be to live in the middle of constant conflict. She didn't have to say much. Her tears, her silence, her conflicted looks toward Ethan and Olivia spoke volumes, and Micah, of course, remained the unwilling centerpiece. The cameras lingered on his stitched face again and again, using his silence to build suspense. Every time he chose not to elaborate, the show leaned harder on Veronica's words and Ethan's rebuttal, because those were the voices filling the gap. What's fascinating is how TLC crafted all of this into a two-side story without ever letting it resolve. On one hand, they put Veronica's social media post on screen, a clear sign they wanted viewers to take it seriously. On the other hand, they gave Ethan the emotional spotlight in his confessionals, letting him call her out and defend his family. They framed the wedding episode like a courtroom trial, but without ever letting the jury, meaning the audience, hear the actual evidence. No video of the injury, no explanation of the overturned tables, no confirmation of what sparked it all. Just two competing narratives, both given airtime, both left hanging. This wasn't sloppy editing. It was intentional. By refusing to provide clarity, TLC guaranteed that fans would split into camps. Some rushed to support Veronica, convinced she was telling the hard truth others were too afraid to say. Others stood firmly behind Ethan and Tegan, framing Veronica as the real instigator. And Micah, caught between those worlds, became the symbolic victim of both the physical injury and the narrative tug-of-war. The brilliance and the cruelty of this storytelling is that it keeps everyone watching. If Veronica's claims were definitively proven or disproven on screen, the drama would be over. If Ethan's defense had been backed by actual footage, the debate would have ended. But instead, we got fragments. Veronica's accusation, Ethan's anger, Tegan's dismissal, the rest of the siblings' uneasy reactions, and the producers, smiling quietly behind the curtain, knowing they had just delivered a storyline that would dominate online conversations long after the credits rolled. That's what made the wedding episode feel less like a family milestone and more like a battleground. Every glance, every confessional, every Instagram post became evidence to fans dissecting the truth, and TLC didn't need to take a side, because giving us two sides without a resolution was far more powerful for ratings. By the time the wedding episode reached its midpoint, it was clear TLC wasn't going to give us the straightforward "what happened" answer that everyone wanted. Instead, the producers built the narrative around theories, some stated outright by cast members, some whispered through editing choices, and some pulled in directly from fan chatter. And the way these theories were dangled in front of us showed just how carefully the network wanted to keep the speculation alive. The first theory was simple and almost innocent compared to the others: seating chart tensions. If you've followed this family over the years, you know that nothing about who sits where is ever just logistics. In a family as divided as the Plaths, a seating chart is practically a statement of loyalty. Who's at the family table, who's separated, who gets a place of honor, it all carries symbolic weight, and the wedding episode leaned into that tension. Quick shots of guests trying to settle in, uncomfortable glances between siblings, the awkward body language between Ethan and Olivia in the same space as Barry and Kim. The atmosphere was thick enough to suggest that even before the first toast, someone could have felt snubbed or provoked. TLC didn't need to spell it out. The implication was that this invisible seating war might have been the spark that set everything else off. The second theory was the accident during setup. This was the version that could have wrapped things up neatly. Maybe Micah got hurt moving furniture, maybe a table collapsed during last-minute adjustments, maybe it was nothing more than clumsy timing. The problem is, the show gave us just enough imagery to suggest this, but never backed it with evidence. We saw overturned tables, we saw decorations in shambles, but no one ever said, yes, this happened while we were setting up. If that had been the truth, why wouldn't TLC just show it? By withholding that moment, the setup accident theory was left dangling, plausible but unsatisfying, and almost too clean for a show built on messy conflict. Then came the darker theory, the one fans debated most fiercely online, a sibling altercation. This was never shown directly, but the confessionals and pointed remarks hinted at it. Veronica's Instagram claims added weight to the idea, while Ethan's fury in his interviews pushed back against it. Micah's silence and stitched face gave the theory emotional power, even without confirmation. TLC's editing added fuel by cutting between injured Micah, tense confessionals, and reaction shots of other siblings looking unsettled. The episode framed this as the theory viewers were supposed to wrestle with, the possibility that behind the picture-perfect wedding setup, one Plath sibling might have lashed out physically. But perhaps the most meta theory was the one the producers themselves hinted at: escalation by production. This is the one that wasn't said aloud but was baked into the editing style. Think about it. Why would an entire camera crew miss the exact moment of the incident, but somehow capture every reaction and aftermath in perfect detail? Why include Veronica's social media posts so prominently, yet refuse to clarify what really happened? The choice to show damage without cause, wounds without incident, turned the entire event into a kind of reality TV cliffhanger. And that left fans wondering if the real story wasn't about the siblings at all, but about how far producers were willing to go to manufacture suspense. Each theory was carefully seeded into the episode like clues in a mystery novel, but none were resolved. That was the point. TLC didn't want to end the speculation. They wanted to guarantee that viewers would argue, tweet, post theories, and tune back in for more. It's a storytelling tactic as old as reality TV itself: withhold the key footage, flood the episode with half explanations, and let the fandom do the rest of the work. And you could see how this played out in real time. Fans online picked their camps. Some said it was clearly an accident, just look at the tables. Others insisted, no, someone in that family lost their temper. Still others accused the network of outright manipulation, arguing that the missing footage was too convenient to be real. And TLC stoked the fire by never correcting or clarifying, even when speculation ran wild. In that way, the wedding episode wasn't just about what happened at the Plath family event, it was about what TLC wanted us to think happened. The show didn't say, this is the truth. Instead, it handed us multiple theories and left us to choose the one that fit our biases, our favorite characters, or our personal feelings about the family. It was storytelling by omission, and it worked. Because whether you believed in the seating chart drama, the setup accident, the sibling fight, or the producer manipulation, you stayed glued to the screen. That's the genius of reality television at its most calculated. By keeping the moment of truth just out of reach, TLC turned a wedding into a mystery box. Micah's stitched nose wasn't just an injury, it was a narrative tool. The overturned tables weren't just furniture, they were visual bait. Veronica's Instagram wasn't just a post, it was an accelerant. And the missing footage wasn't an accident, it was the centerpiece. So when fans ask what really happened at the Plath wedding, the honest answer is this: TLC doesn't want you to know. They want you to keep guessing, keep debating, and most importantly, keep watching. By the time the Plath wedding episode hit its breaking point, it was clear that TLC had no intention of giving us the full story. Instead, the producers did what they do best. They laid out a handful of breadcrumbs, each one pointed toward a different explanation, then carefully stepped back. What we got wasn't clarity, but a set of competing theories that the show dangled in front of viewers like a mystery puzzle. And the brilliance or the manipulation, depending on how you see it, is that none of these theories was ever proven. Let's start with the most subtle but also the most classic family drama angle: seating chart tensions. Anyone who's watched this family knows that a simple wedding seating arrangement isn't just about where people sit, it's about alliances. It's about recognition. It's about who is in and who is out. And in a family fractured by Kim and Barry's divorce, Olivia's estrangement from her in-laws, and years of sibling rivalries, the seating chart became a minefield. The cameras lingered on empty chairs. We saw quick cuts of siblings glancing at one another with awkward half-smiles. Olivia sitting stiffly across the room from Barry was enough to make the audience uncomfortable. Was this TLC's way of planting the idea that simmering tensions over something as small as seating could have been the match that lit the fire? The implication was there, but once again, no one on camera connected the dots outright. The edit did the work. Then came the safe theory: an accident during setup. If you were watching the episode casually, you might have thought this was the obvious explanation. After all, the footage showed overturned tables, scattered decorations, and a wedding space that looked like it had been shaken by a storm. Add in the reveal of Micah's stitched nose, and it's easy to imagine a simple accident: a table collapsing, a fall during setup, or someone tripping during last-minute preparations. This theory would have wrapped things up in a neat bow. And yet TLC never confirmed it, not once. Instead, they showed us just enough physical wreckage to suggest it, but withheld any direct evidence. If it really was nothing more than a clumsy accident, why wouldn't they simply show it? The lack of clarity here made the accident explanation feel almost too convenient, as though it was dangled as a possible out but never intended to satisfy the audience. Of course, the most explosive and fan-fueled theory was the one the show leaned into most heavily: a sibling altercation. This wasn't shown outright, no one was caught on tape throwing a punch or shoving a chair, but it was everywhere in the subtext. Veronica's Instagram post was put on screen for a reason. It added fuel to the claim that something physical had happened. Ethan's sharp confessional lines, dripping with anger, seemed to push back against her narrative without ever fully denying it. Moria's nervous body language in her interviews added another layer. And then there was Micah himself, injured, silent, a stitched nose that said everything and nothing at the same time. The confessionals were edited to highlight the idea that something happened between siblings, without ever giving us the moment. It was the ultimate bait, and the silence around it made the speculation roar even louder. But perhaps the most intriguing theory wasn't about the family at all. It was about the show producer escalation. If you've been watching reality TV long enough, you know that missing footage is rarely an accident. How could a full camera crew capture every moment before and after the chaos, but somehow miss the exact instant Micah was injured? The careful editing, Veronica's posts, Ethan's fury, overturned tables, looked less like an oversight and more like a deliberate strategy. The producers didn't just want to show an event, they wanted to create a cliffhanger, a narrative black hole that fans would rush to fill with speculation. And it worked. Online debates exploded with theories not just about the siblings, but about TLC itself. Was the network deliberately hiding footage? Did they stage parts of the aftermath? Did they encourage confessionals that would muddy the waters instead of clarifying them? The episode practically invited this line of thinking by leaning so heavily on reaction shots and aftermath imagery while leaving the central moment conveniently off-screen. What's fascinating here is how TLC used these competing theories to pull the audience deeper. Every angle, the seating chart, the accident, the altercation, the producer manipulation, was presented just enough to be plausible but never enough to be confirmed. And by avoiding answers, TLC achieved something that a straightforward explanation never could. They made the controversy bigger than the event itself. Viewers left the episode not knowing what happened but feeling compelled to argue about it. Fans on social media picked their camps. Some insisted it was a harmless accident, others swore there had been a violent altercation, while another group accused the network of manufacturing the entire thing. And TLC, they sat back and let the conversation explode, benefiting from every repost, every screenshot, every heated debate. That's the power of omission. By refusing to answer the question, the producers kept control of the story. And they turned Micah's injury, an overturned reception, and a fractured family gathering into a mystery box designed to stretch across weeks of online chatter and future episodes. So when you look at the wedding episode, the real story isn't just what may or may not have happened between the Plath siblings. The real story is how TLC curated a set of theories, dangled them in front of us, and then walked away, leaving fans to fight over the fragments. And if you felt manipulated by that edit, it's because you were. That's reality TV at its most effective, not giving you the truth, but giving you just enough to make sure you'll never stop looking for it. The aftermath of the wedding was less about what physically happened and more about what emotionally unraveled in the wake of it. If Act 4 was all about theories, Act 5 is about consequences. And the fallout wasn't just physical, it rippled across every single fracture line this family had been tiptoeing around for years. The most haunting piece of this aftermath is Micah's silence. From the moment viewers saw his stitched nose, the obvious question was, what does Micah have to say? But the cameras gave us almost nothing. He didn't go into detail, didn't accuse anyone, didn't even offer the accident explanation that could have cooled the fire. Instead, Micah tried to press forward, smiling through group scenes, showing up for family events, refusing to let the stitches define his entire storyline. And yet that silence was louder than any confessional. For fans, his refusal to set the record straight kept every theory alive. Was he protecting a sibling, avoiding feeding the drama, or was he simply unwilling to become the centerpiece of a storyline he never asked for? Whatever the reason, Micah's decision not to clarify left a vacuum that everyone else rushed to fill. That vacuum is where Veronica stepped in. By choosing to escalate publicly, through her Instagram post that the show deliberately highlighted, she took a private wound and turned it into a public debate. Veronica didn't hold back in her language. She framed the incident as evidence of deeper dysfunction, even pointing fingers that aligned with one side of the family feud. TLC could have ignored the post, but instead they featured it, essentially validating it as part of the narrative. And that's where Veronica's choice became so polarizing. To some, she was the truth teller, the one refusing to let the incident be swept under the rug. To others, she was the opportunist, using social media to cement her version of the story and pour gasoline on already raging family fires. By going public, Veronica ensured that the incident couldn't be contained within the walls of the wedding reception. It became a storyline that fans, tabloids, and the entire cast had to contend with. No one felt the weight of that escalation more than Ethan and Tegan. The two positioned themselves in direct opposition to Veronica's claims, and their confessionals were as close to combative as we've seen from Ethan on camera. He bristled at what he described as unfair portrayals, firing back with a level of intensity that suggested this wasn't just about the wedding, it was about years of mistrust and bad blood. Tegan stood firmly with him, offering her perspective and doubling down on their shared narrative. Their insistence on defending their side made it clear for Ethan this wasn't a storyline he could brush past. It was another chapter in a long history of feeling misrepresented both by his family and, in many ways, by the show itself. And once again, Ethan became the reluctant lightning rod of the Plath family saga. While those battles played out, the emotional collateral landed hardest on Mariah and Olivia. For Mariah, the wedding chaos pressed on wounds that were already raw. Her strained relationship with her siblings and her parents had left her floating between worlds, and the sight of another family event imploding only deepened her sense of instability. In her confessionals, Mariah's tone carried both sadness and exhaustion, like someone who's seen this cycle before and has little hope it will ever end. Olivia, meanwhile, was once again caught in a storm that wasn't fully hers, yet affected her deeply. The wedding wasn't her event, but she was in the middle of it, seated awkwardly across from Barry, navigating icy air with Kim, and inevitably tied to Ethan's very public defense. The cameras captured her discomfort in ways words didn't need to. For Olivia, the fallout wasn't just another family mess, it was confirmation that no matter how far she tried to step back, she would always be pulled into the gravitational field of Plath family dysfunction. And looming over all of it, like a shadow no one could escape, was Kim and Barry's divorce. Though the wedding chaos didn't directly involve them, their separation was the context that shaped every moment. The kids weren't just navigating one bad night, they were navigating the collapse of their family's foundation. Every side glance, every icy silence, Every angry confessional was haunted by the unspoken truth that the family structure they grew up with no longer existed. Kim and Barry's split left the children fractured into camps, and the wedding became the perfect stage for those fractures to show in full. What could have been a unifying milestone instead became another reminder that the divorce wasn't just about two parents parting ways, it was about a family that no longer knew how to function together. That's why the fallout of the wedding was so devastating. It wasn't just stitches on Micah's nose or an overturned table. It was a symbolic unraveling of everything the Plaths had tried to hold together. Micah's silence, Veronica's escalation, Ethan's fury, Mariah's weariness, Olivia's displacement, and the divorce looming in the background. All of it pointed to a family at war not just with one another, but with the image of unity they once sold to the world. And TLC knew exactly what they were doing. By focusing less on answers and more on fallout, the producers made sure viewers didn't tune in for resolution, they tuned in for emotional stakes. The question wasn't just what happened, but what does this mean for the Plaths going forward? And that, more than any missing footage, is the real cliffhanger. By now it's obvious TLC had the footage. Weddings are some of the most heavily filmed events in reality TV. Multiple cameras, audio running non-stop, producers watching every second. And yet somehow, at the exact moment Micah was injured, the cameras missed it. No, that wasn't an accident. That was editing. TLC made a business decision. Instead of showing viewers the cause, they showed only the aftermath. The stitched nose, the overturned tables, the tense confessionals, and Veronica's Instagram post flashed across the screen like evidence in a courtroom. That's not oversight, that's suspense. Producers know that unanswered questions don't close a storyline, they open it wider. And in a show that thrives on fractured relationships, keeping the audience guessing is worth more than a clean resolution. Because here's the truth, speculation is currency. Every comment section that exploded into debates, every fan theory dissected on Reddit, every YouTube breakdown that tried to piece together the missing footage, all of it kept Welcome to Plathville trending. The mystery became bigger than the event itself. By withholding the cause, TLC guaranteed the conversation would outlast the episode. The show wasn't just on air anymore, it was living rent-free in the minds of fans who couldn't let it go. This is what producers call the mystery box effect. Don't show the incident. Don't give away the truth. Show the wreckage, the tears, the fallout, and then pull back. It forces the audience to become participants, filling in the blanks with their own theories. And in doing so, TLC doesn't just control the story, they control the audience. We're not passive viewers anymore. We're detectives, gossip columnists, and speculators all at once. And that's exactly how they want it. But there's a cost. Because while TLC benefits from endless speculation, the Plath family is left living with the consequences of what wasn't shown. Micah's silence becomes a storyline. Veronica's post becomes a weapon. Ethan's anger becomes the centerpiece of a fan war. And Kim and Barry's divorce hovers like smoke over every unanswered question. In real life, wounds don't heal just because the cameras cut away. So what do we do with this? We ask ourselves what matters more, the truth or the drama. TLC has made their choice. They chose drama, suspense, and control. But families aren't cliffhangers, they're human beings. And every time the producers hide the cause and spotlight the chaos, they're sending a message: the spectacle matters more than the people inside it. Now it's your turn. What do you believe really happened that day? Was it an accident? Was it an altercation? Was it something we haven't even considered? Drop your theory in the comments, because I want to hear every angle. And more importantly, I want to know how you feel about TLC's decision to leave us in the dark. Was it smart storytelling, or was it exploitation? In the end, this moment isn't just about Micah's injury, it's about family, truth, and control. About how much power producers have to shape a narrative, and how little control the people inside that narrative really hold. And maybe that's the biggest injury of all. And so we circle back to that stitched face, that overturned reception, that wedding day that will never be remembered for joy but for silence. The mystery remains: a wound on Micah's nose, a wound on the family's image, and a wound on the truth itself. TLC chose to hand us the broken pieces and left out the moment that could have explained everything. For me, this moment is bigger than one injury. It captures the heart of what the Plath family has been battling for years: control, appearances, and the pressure of image. Whether it's Kim and Barry's divorce, Ethan and Olivia's public struggles, or Mariah searching for her own voice, every storyline comes back to that same tug of war between who holds the truth and who gets to tell it. Micah's silence, Veronica's public stand, Ethan's fury, each reaction is shaped by the weight of being seen but not fully understood. That's why this wedding incident feels like the perfect storm. It's not just about what happened, it's about what we weren't allowed to see. And that gap speaks louder than any confessional ever could. I'm Sarah, and this is Sister Wives Daily. If you made it this far, I know you care about this story as much as I do. So hit subscribe, drop your theory in the comments, and join this community where we keep digging through what's shown and what's hidden. Because as long as TLC leaves us in the dark, we'll keep asking questions.